Good evening. Welcome to the Wednesday, September 13th, 2023 meeting of the Chappaqua Central School District Board of Education. The board has been in executive session since roughly 6:15. Can I have a motion, please, to reopen the public meeting? All in favor?
Aye.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I will start. Good evening. Today started with a bang. I hope your families slept through the storm this morning better than mine did. There's a lot going on over the next 2 weeks before we meet again, so please keep an eye on the calendar. Elementary open houses are tomorrow night, which is always fun. I hope you get to go, our elementary school parents, and see our wonderful schools, meet your child's teachers, hear about all the great work they're planning to do this year, and sit in the tiny, tiny chairs. I know also that the PTA has a number of wonderful events planned across our schools over the next few weeks, so please do check your email. Homecoming is Friday the 22nd this year. I sadly will be on a plane home and won't be able to make it, but everybody should go. It's a super fun night of community and festivities. I know there are PTA events planned beforehand, and it's really amazing for our younger students to get a taste of Greeley and what awaits them down the road. Good news, we have the SRO contract before us tonight for a vote. As I said at our last meeting, this has been a long road to negotiate this contract, but we are voting on it tonight, and I am optimistic that we will be up and running shortly. I want to take a minute now and say congratulations to Elliot Science, who's with us tonight. Elliot, and we're gonna watch a video in a moment, but briefly, Elliot was awarded the Louis E. Yavner Citizen Award in recognition of the incredible work he has done as a high school student surrounding Holocaust education. This award is a statewide honor given each year to only 2 New York residents in honor and recognition of their work and contributions around Holocaust and human rights teaching. Elliot, your work is commendable, and we are all so impressed by all that you've done. The teaching of history, honestly and fully, is crucial to our society, and as sadly we are losing that generation, my grandparents, your great-grandparents, your work on this film and all the teaching and outreach you've done in conjunction with it is more important than ever. So thank you, congratulations. We're gonna watch a video, yes, and then you're gonna come up on stage.
So Regent Fran Wills also, on behalf of our community, presented Elliot for consideration to the Board of Regents in Albany on Monday, and so I happened to be able to go with his parents, and I taped it, so we're going to watch her and her address regarding Elliot's good work. So David's going to pull that up really quickly.
To present the second Louis E. Yavner Citizen Award to Elliot Science. He is a remarkable young student educator currently in his senior year at Horace Greeley High School and has made profound and wide-ranging contributions to Holocaust education on local, regional, and statewide scales since 2018. This journey began at the age of 10 when he appeared alongside his 90-year-old great-grandfather, a survivor of Auschwitz, in the HBO documentary, The Number on Great-Grandpa's Arm. This experience ignited Elliot's passion for spreading awareness about the Holocaust and its lessons. With a dedication fueled by personal connection, Elliot has tirelessly traveled to over 55 schools, encompassing elementary, middle, and high schools, colleges, museums, churches, community centers, and synagogues. Through screenings of the documentary and engaging discussions, Elliot has reached more than 3,000 students, teachers, and adults. These interactions serve as platforms for profound conversations about the Holocaust, emphasizing the perils of ignorance and highlighting the imperative of kindness, and standing up for justice. Through his efforts, Elliot has become a beacon of knowledge and an advocate for combating hate. Furthermore, Elliot holds the esteemed position of co-president of the Horace Greeley High School Club, Enough, Educate Now on Understanding Genocide and Hate. In this role, he consistently underscores the significance of taking a stand against hate, encouraging individuals to intervene when witnessing acts of bullying or injustice. Elliot passionately advocates for kindness and empathy as foundational principles that should guide our interactions with others. His unwavering commitment to education and his ability to inspire and to aspire change are instrumental in cultivating an inclusive and compassionate generation. Elliot Science's ongoing educational endeavors reflect his profound dedication to shaping a more enlightened and inclusive society. By shedding light on the Holocaust and its enduring lessons, he empowers young minds to embrace the importance of knowledge, empathy, and advocacy. Through his unwavering efforts, Elliot is making a significant and lasting impact on his community and beyond, forging a path toward a brighter and more compassionate future.
Okay, so I want to, first of all, I've never had a student honored by the Board of Regents before. This is a significant accomplishment. So Elliot, on behalf of the school district, congratulations. I'd like to invite you up here with Dr. Seppi, your principal, and your mother, Stacy, to come up and take a picture with the Board of Education. We have something for you. I mean, it's just such an honor to be your superintendent and to have you in our school district. So again, I couldn't be prouder to be able to have you here this evening and to honor you in this way with the Board of Education. So if the board can get up, we're going to give Elliot an award. We're going to take a big picture. Congratulations, Elliot.
Okay, shifting gears, I want to also wish everyone in our community who is celebrating Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, this weekend, a happy and sweet New Year. And I want to take a moment now to address something that I know has been on the minds of many parents over the past few days, which is the news coming out of Teachers College that they dissolved the TC Reading and Writing Project. I know that parents are wondering, this feels very loud, why did we recommit to some of the TC program, both from a curriculum and a financial perspective last spring, and what are we doing now? So Dr. Pease is going to address these questions in a few minutes, but I want to speak briefly on them from the perspective of the board, and then also not be the only one to speak and open it up to the rest of the board if anybody else wants to speak, especially Kaylee, who has some actual expertise as an educator and professional developer. First of all, as a bit of history, the so-called reading wars have been going on for decades. We know, as all schools and educators know, that basic literacy skills are fundamental to student success. This district is constantly evaluating the programs we use to teach all subjects, but particularly literacy. While we use the TC program as one of our foundation programs, it is not, and has not been for as long as I've been on the board, the only program we're using in our classrooms. I really cannot speak to before my time here, but we have not relied solely on TC's program for years, but use it as one piece of the literacy puzzle, because in many, many ways it is a very strong program. From the New York Times article on the TC move to close the Reading and Writing Institute, Teachers College is moving towards collaboration among different evidence-based approaches to literacy, which is exactly what we've been doing and will continue to do here. We use Phonics First in all of our K-2 elementary school classrooms, which is a research-based phonics curriculum replete with manipulatives and other multisensory literacy tools. All of our K-2 teachers have received 30 hours of graduate level training in this program. We got to see a presentation on this program as it was rolling out, and it's really, really good. We have also implemented Benchmark to continue the teaching of phonics, grammar, and word study in grades 3 to 5. Our educators are constantly evaluating what is working and what we can do better, and when we find areas of weakness, we address them. For example, we're adding even more robust grammar instruction to our literacy curriculum. As I mentioned before, open house is tomorrow night for the elementary schools. We hope that all of our parents will be able to attend and ask questions. And Dr. Pease and Alyssa Stover, our Director of Elementary Education, will be presenting a webinar on September 20th addressing the changes at TC and what it does and does not mean for our program. But if you still have questions after that, please reach out to your child's teacher or principal for a better understanding of how literacy is being taught in your child's grade. I want to just end by saying that the closing of this program at TC does not mean that the program is bad. It's a parting of ways of education professionals. We recommitted to the units of study last spring because we believe that the program adds value to our students as one piece of the literacy puzzle. We will continue to monitor the efficacy of our program, as we do with all of our programs, to ensure that it is what will best meet the needs of our students. So with that, I will open it up to anybody else who wants to comment on this.
Okay, here we are. Okay, so our goal is the same. Everyone in this room, everyone tuning in, all the people up here, all the teachers, the experts, everyone is on the same team. We want the absolute best outcome for our students. Not some of our students, but all of them. We want them to reach their limitless potential. We have a system for assessment and progress monitoring. We also have a system for students who identify needing reading remediation and additional reading support. Our district is providing best-in-class remediation, Wilson, which is aligned to the Orton-Gillingham multisensory approach, which is one of the strongest evidence-based program out there. We have Tier 1 for Phonics First, which is also OG aligned, Orton-Gillingham. Tier 2 and Tier 3, which is remediation through Wilson. And reading and writing workshop is just an additional layer and a component of our literacy instruction. It is not the only literacy curriculum we implement in this district. There's 5 pillars of literacy: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. The different components and curriculum materials come together to support our lifelong learners. Writing used to be show what you know, regurgitate back what you just read and put it in writing. Now, writing is used as a tool to synthesize your learning. Writing makes the learning stronger. The focus here is student success and literacy development, regardless of specific program affiliations. No one is here to defend any one person or any one curriculum or institution, but to shift our thinking and to turn our focus and energy on how we can always look to improve, to serve all of our students the best education they deserve. That's all.
Okay, great. Then that's all from us.
Yeah, I would just like to add, and I know Adam's going to talk in a few moments about our ELA curriculum and then move into our data presentation. The last thing that anyone wants us to do is to make decisions without really thinking about them. And so I know that when news comes out and parents or anyone might feel like you need to do something right now, but that's not always the best decision. Our best decisions are made is when we take time, we talk to our teachers, and we really think about like what our next steps are as an educational community. And we're going to follow that process in this situation as well. And I feel like it's a good one for us. We can't make decisions based off of outside corporations determining what's in their best interest as they move forward. We have to really think about what's in our best interest based on what we know and our experience here. So that's what we're going to do, and we'll continue to provide information to our parents as we move down this path. But I feel really comfortable and confident in our ELA program. We've done a lot of work on that since I've been here with our administrative team and with our teachers, and I feel like we're in a really good place to be able to move through this transition and make good decisions for our district. And so that's what we're going to continue to do moving forward. And I understand other places are making different decisions, and that they have to do that based on their own situations that are unique and not aligned with the decisions that we've made. And so I think that's a good process for us, and we're definitely going to follow it. Okay, so in terms of the superintendent report, I just want to mention a few things. I had a webinar. It was the first time I ever had done something like this by myself, where I covered a lot of different information at the start of the school year, and I pulled it down on Sunday and removed some of the safety information, and then I put it back up online. So if parents want to, who didn't have a chance to participate, or they want to review it, it's on the homepage. They're certainly welcome to do that. And then based on, some of the feedback I got from that webinar, I'm going to hold another one on December 4th at 7, and I put this out in my letter to our parents. And this focus will be on our DEI initiative. So it'll be another opportunity for parents to hear from me about some of the work that we're engaged in across the school district, and then ask some questions either on our DEI initiatives or anything that they want to bring into the webinar, and I'll answer them. So I'm going to try to do one of these a quarter, and so that's when our next one's going to be scheduled. We have some big events coming up. As Hillary mentioned, we have our open house tomorrow night. It's the return to the building, and I know we had our conferences on site last year, so parents did get into our buildings for those if they chose to. But here we're going to bring groups of people back together again. I feel really great about that. So we look forward to welcoming our elementary parents to our schools on Thursday night. And then after that, the communications committee, we might talk a little bit more about this, but we'll be sending out a survey after each open house to get some feedback to see if we can make those, if we want to make some adjustments in the future. So that will be going out to our elementary parents on Friday. And then next week is homecoming. We have a lot of big events happening. Of course, we have our varsity teams and many of our JV and modified teams playing next week on site. So our big event is Friday, where we have as many games as we can play here at Greeley. And we also have our PTA Fall Family Diversity Gathering that will take place in the courtyard. So we invite our families to come to that event. It's a really great day. We have all kinds of things happening on campus. And then we open up our building to our younger families so they can see what the high school looks like. And so I encourage people to attend if they don't have any plans on Friday night, because it's a really nice evening for our community. And so now I want to move over to Adam. I'm going to give him the clicker, and he's going to move forward with the literacy update.
Thank you. So I know during the community update, we usually move pretty quickly, but I tried to put together a series of slides that will kind of build up a foundation with regard to the complexities of all that we know with regard to literacy, or all that we think we know, to try to, tie together a whole bunch of different pieces that have been part of the conversation really over the last couple of years. So I'm going to start with what I think we know with regard, like at the current time, with regard to why this has been kind of thrust back out. Oops, let's go back one. All right, what I think we know. Okay, here we go. So the first thing is that despite the recent news, we've got what we believe to be a really powerful literacy experience this year. And the reason I share that is because with all the shifts that you've heard happening, I'm going to speak to some of them here. It's important that our teachers have been trained in the curriculum that we were expecting to deliver and are delivering. We have all of the materials and resources. We were able to obtain them last year. We'll talk more about that. And they are in the classroom. Students are learning them now. And so we're in a good place despite the kind of instability with the larger picture of this. the second bullet, what was formerly the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project has dissolved. The name change and the new branding is called Advancing Literacy. Mary Erin Worth is leading that, and Lucy Calkins is still a tenured professor at Teachers College. She's on sabbatical, and she's started a new company called Mossflower. Advancing Literacy, which is the TC-connected new program, will continue to provide professional support for a variety of different literacy curriculum. In addition to units of study, they're going to begin to support other things. The units of study Heinemann confirmed that they'll continue to publish the units of study, and they have a plan to publish the grades 3 through 5 units of study soon. We think that those will come out next year. We haven't made any decision about purchasing them, but Heinemann plans to continue to publish the units of study. We were afraid that, potentially if we chose to stay this route, that they may not, and that could be problematic. And then the last thing is, and both Kaylee and Hillary mentioned this, that the units of study are really just one part of our comprehensive literacy approach. So as Kaylee mentioned, when it comes to literacy, and this is not a Teachers College graphic, this is a pretty like science of reading, a pretty well accepted graphic with regard to the pillars of literacy. You can see on here phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension are seen as the 5 pillars. The difference between phonemic awareness and phonics is phonemic awareness can be done without paper. So it's things like rhyming, segmentation, like what letters do you hear in the word cat? It's the k, or what sounds do you hear? K, at, and also the rhyming that goes as part of that. And then phonics really starts to be the paper part, the letter identification, letter sounds, blends, things like that. And then fluency, vocabulary, comprehension are a little bit more common in terms of our regular vernacular. You can see on the left side, our package of units of study in reading and writing, phonics first, benchmark, handwriting without tears, phonomic and phonological awareness, read aloud, shared reading, and interactive writing. So you can think about this as like a balanced diet. And I think some of the crux of the criticism the historical criticism with regard to Teachers College has been the Reader's Workshop and Writer's Workshop, in our opinion here, since I've been here, is a piece of this literacy puzzle, but it is not the whole plate. And a lot of the criticism around the results that Teachers College had gotten prior to the revision of the units of study, which happened, we just got them this year as the first year of implementation for K2, was that they were not addressing all of the pillars, especially around the first 2 with phonics. It wasn't building that capacity with students. And recognizing that years ago, we added in other programs to round out the Teachers College workshop in reading and writing. And so just like as you see on this plate where we've got a quarter protein, a quarter whole grains, the Teachers College programs, in our opinion, were not the whole plate. The revisions actually pushed them to be a much larger part of the plate. For us, we have the other half of the plate as the programs that I had mentioned. Phonics first is K2, benchmark is 3, 4, 5. Phonics is exactly what it sounds like. It's the phonemic awareness and also the phonics instruction. Benchmark starts to get into more word study. We use it in 3, 4, 5. There's also a grammar micro workshop. There's spelling, there's vocabulary as all part, explicit instruction in those things is all part of that program. And then there's also, we use a program called Handwriting Without Tears and also cursive and typing as well as part of our entire literacy package. So the challenge with this as we think about it is because this is a Chappaqua combination of a variety of programs, you can't go out and find research on this package of programs. This is unique to Chappaqua. We've put it together because we believe it addresses all of the pillars, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. All right, so this graphic is Scarborough's reading rope. And again, this isn't a Teachers College. This is completely separate from Teachers College. This is pretty well accepted in the kind of science of reading conversations. And it dates back to 2001 with a researcher, Scarborough, who used to use pipe cleaners to explain to educators and parents. She did a lot of work with students that had dyslexia. And she would use pipe cleaners to explain how complex teaching reading is. And she would braid together these pipe cleaners. And that became this graphic of Scarborough's rope, which is pretty widely recognized among literacy educators. This is not a teacher's college thing. This is kind of all the programs are built around these things. You can see on the bottom, the sight recognition, decoding, and phonological awareness. Those things happen early. We're usually talking like K1, 2. Then you start to get up into the higher, like the ones on the top, literacy, knowledge, verbal reasoning. Teachers College, even the original units of study, tended to do the top part well and was criticized for not explicitly doing the bottom part as well, which is really why we use the benchmark and the phonics first as part of our package. So the idea here is, as a school district, to figure out how can you put together a package of programs and experiences that braid all of these things together, because we know that this is what builds a strong reader. One of the challenges that all students don't need the exact same proportion of all of these things. Some of them need more support in certain areas as they develop skills over time, which adds to some of the challenge of putting together the package. All right, so this, I know there's a lot of text on this slide, but I thought it was important for you to see. These are the components of our literacy program by grade. So you can see that for reading, we do use what were the TC or are the TC units of study. K1, 2 this year, we use the revised units. I'm going to talk about why in just a minute. The 3, 4, 5 have not been published yet. We anticipate that they'll be published at some point this year. There's also this reading comprehension and language. There's a new curriculum as part of this revision called Let's Gather, which we did purchase and are implementing. Unit mentor text you can see in grades 3 and 4. The writing, we use Teachers College units of study. And then you can see, we've talked a lot about the phonics and word study. You see the phonics first and the benchmark there for 3, 4. There's handwriting, typing, and then intervention programs. Wilson Leveled Literacy, which is LLI, and Just Words are our programs for intervention as the students get up into upper elementary. All right, so I have 2 images that show how students grow over time. The one on the left is from NWEA MAPS. The MAPS assessment is given for us to all students in grades 1 through 8. And what you can see on this graph is, I want you to just note the curve being steeper towards the bottom and not as steep towards the top or towards the right side. And that's important with regard to the decision that we made to go with the revised units of study. And I'll connect those dots in just a minute. But you can see how much growth our kindergartners, first graders, and second graders are expected to make. Kids, they say that students learn how to read in K1, 2, and then they read to learn in grades 3+. So it's like learn to read and then read to learn. So students really need to learn to read in K1, 2. That's where it happens. On the right side, again, this isn't a TC graphic. This is actually Fontes and Pinnell text levels. They're leveled by alphabet. So you can see like there's level A. Students will come in kindergarten and not even B. They'll be like a pre-A. And you can see in kindergarten, they really go from A to D, but you can see that giant jump in first grade. They go from E to J and then K to M in second grade. So from A to M, just that K1, 2, they're really jumping 13 levels. You can see towards the bottom there that by the time they hit grade 7, grade 8, like grade 7 and 8 is like one letter. Like they're not even, they don't make that same kind of like tremendous growth, which is an important part when it comes to like, why did we get the new revised units of study if we're not sure long-term that we're going to commit to that, right? Because this idea is that our first graders deserve access to the most recent, most research-based version of the program that we can get. And if we press the pause button, they wouldn't have that. And you need to learn how to read in K1, 2 is basically the idea here. All right, so there have been some conversations about the finances. What did these revised units cost? What did we spend, and why did we spend it? So you can see the revised units cost us just under $35,000. The Let's Gather curriculum cost us $16,000. So the total TC update for K1, 2 for this year was $51,700. In terms of the timing, as this news is breaking, I thought it was important for you to understand that we actually made those purchases last year in April and May. And we did that so we could support professional development for all teachers in June before they left. Many came in and engaged over the summer in professional development, but that all teachers are not available over the summer. So we wanted to have those units in June so we could do the PD that we needed for the staff to be ready to implement those new units in September. So this was well before we knew anything about kind of what would happen at TC with regard to the rebranding and split, et cetera. You can also see on the bottom, we spent almost $64,000 on jump rope readers. K2 libraries, as part of the shift with Teachers College, K2 libraries have been reorganized, so they're not leveled libraries anymore. They're actually organized around phonics and what phonics skills students are ready to learn. So that was another shift that more closely aligns the units of study to the research that prior we were doing leveled libraries at the early grades, and now we're doing libraries organized around phonics concepts that students are learning. So the 63,000, the 64,000 that's there it's like program agnostic. Those are books that kids are reading that would transfer across programs. They're not like just something that we use just with the units of study. So we're really talking in terms of costs at 51.7 that you see there. So this is just a slide showing what we got for that money, more closely aligned programs of the science of reading, direct teaching of phonological awareness, phonics, grammar. We got decodable texts, new assessments, phonics assessments for K1-2, knowledge building and vocabulary development and comprehension skills. That's just a picture of the box set on the right side, as well as some of those, they call them jump rope readers, which is part of how we reorganized our library. And those jump rope readers are, instead of organized by text complexity, they're organized by like phonics sounds that the students are using through the book. So I actually brought some examples. If you're interested in seeing them, I could pass them down the row. And this is that graph again, just showing us why make that decision to spend the 53,000. It was our position last year, and I think I actually included this as part of our my budget presentation last year, that I would recommend that we make this purchase because those times, like those early K1-2 grades, are the time where students really need to learn how to read, and we felt like the most updated curriculum was what we needed to have students be exposed to, especially at that cost. All right, so here's some actions and priorities as we move forward. We're going to continue to support the implementation of the revised units this year. We have them, they're in our classrooms, our teachers are ready to teach them, they're teaching them now. We are in the process of assembling a team of educators. We're calling it the Science of Reading Literacy Team. We actually just increased the cap of it. We had it capped at 20. This is classroom teachers, reading specialists. We have representation, really K-8, to help us be a steering committee, but also so we can build some capacity in educators around the science of reading, so they can help us make some decisions, review student data, study emerging research. We're going to stay in touch with Advancing Literacy and Heinemann. Advancing Literacy is the Teachers College component. Heinemann is actually the publisher of the units of study, because we want to make sure we know where they are headed and what they are thinking. And we're also going to secure some non-affiliated literacy support. And by non-affiliated, I mean program agnostic, something that's not connected to a program. So you see the ×2 there. We're going to contract or engage with some professional developers or a firm for professional development that can support our literacy program overall. But in addition to that, I'd make a recommendation to Dr. Ackerman and the Board of Education that we engage a science of reading expert outside of professional development to help work with our science of reading task force and evaluate our programs. And, because there isn't the research out there, they can certainly evaluate our student data, not unlike we've done with other departments, have a, national expert in the science of reading come in and take a look at what we've created that we think is a balanced plate and make some recommendations. Is this, are these the right programs? Should we continue to stay the course with what we've got, or do we need to make some modifications? So we will certainly discuss. I'd be interested to hear what people think about that, but we can discuss it as we go forward. All right, so I did want to share with the board and the community for more information. If you're looking for additional information, certainly teachers and building administrators are the place to go if parents have concerns about their experience that their children are having with regard to the day in and day out literacy experience, achievement and growth that their children are showing. Parent updates. We sent a letter on Tuesday, September 12th. So that letter is posted on our CNI literacy page. We'll continue to send parent updates. As was mentioned, we have an open house for elementary schools. That's actually tomorrow. And we have a district webinar on the 20th. So we'll make sure we send out that webinar link. We already included that there will be one and a save the date in the parent letter that we had sent earlier this week. And the CNI literacy page, we're going to continue to keep it updated. We'll record that webinar if any parents can't tune into it live, and we'll make sure we post it up there as well.
Before Adam goes into the data presentation, which is always scheduled in September, are there any questions or comments based off of what Adam shared?
I really appreciate the comprehensiveness of that, Adam. For kind of go forward purposes, like I'm thinking about, okay, we'll spend the next couple of weeks explaining this in more detail for folks. When would the community expect to hear the results of anything that we might decide based on anything that you did on those priorities? Like, is this kind of a 6-month thing? Is it going to take most of the school year?
Yeah, I would say that if we go down the path of like a request for proposals for an expert, like a national expert in the science of reading, to get that person onboarded, have that person understand the programs we're using, they're going to likely have a big request of student data, for example, want to dig into the programs that we're using, perhaps observe some classrooms, talk to some teachers. I would imagine that would take us through late fall, early winter, and then start to, work with our science of reading task force to, potentially make some recommendations, identify some gaps that we might have. Are the recommendations small recommendations, or we need to make some adjustment in instructional practice? Or are they big recommendations, like we really need to start looking at another program or other programs, or changing out programs? We also have to keep in mind the budgetary components of this and thinking about the budget timeline, that usually my budgets are due to the business office around January-ish. We start to present them to the board in midwinter. So we want to have a really good sense of what are we looking at? Are we looking at some, maybe a smaller program, or are we looking at a total overhaul? And we also have to do some thinking about training timelines and rollout if we're headed in the direction of changing programs. I'm not saying that we are, but that's what I'm thinking in terms of timeline. Things are moving so fast in terms of we could find out tomorrow these units are going to no longer be published, or something like that. So I think it's a really dynamic, changing situation.
So I would share that if the board agrees with our pathway forward, then the next step would be we would create an RFP for your review, and then we would place that out there, and then you would interview who could potentially do an analysis of our program, just like we've done for DEI work and special education, and then that would help us project out our timeline a little bit further. I would just ask that people allow us to do our job. I can understand the concern. I get it. Especially with our youngest readers, but there are a lot of experts here who are engaged in this work day in and day out, and our literacy team, made up of our teachers and our administrators that really have an understanding of our work, is the best way to figure out what our next steps are. And I think adding a consultant on top of that to provide more information for us, I think is the strongest way for us to figure out, okay, what are our next steps based on these large businesses making decisions that they need to make for their financial stability.
Yeah, no, I think that, Adam, I think that sounds like a really good plan. I think, the plate that you've described, I think is a really good plate, but I think it's also, because we have really done sort of a make your own literacy program, which, we feel good about, but I think having an outside set of eyes on it and just say, either, yeah, it's great, or it's great and you could do this better, or here are some things you could change. I think we've been doing this now for enough years that we're doing what we think we're doing well. We think we're doing it well, so let's let somebody see if it's really doing what we think it's doing, and I think that could be a great.
Because there's a lot of sensational stuff in the news. So we don't want to make decisions based on that, but I can understand how parents feel like we need to do something right now based on what they're reading. But we have a lot of people that know this curriculum in a way that's very deep and have been engaged in this work for a number of years, that we have to follow the process. That's worked for us so many different times before. So I feel very, very comfortable with this plan. And if there are suggestions on how to improve it, we're certainly here to listen and to hear that. But what we're not going to do is say, okay, this happened today, this is what we're doing tomorrow. That would be bad for children. That would be bad for our teachers, and that's not a thoughtful way to move forward when we're talking about really important years for kids and their developmental understanding of how to read and write. So, anything else? All right, Matt, go ahead.
I would just say that, as Ryan pointed out, it's sort of a 4-month timeline here, so that doesn't leave a lot of time before you have to make that budgetary decision. So we sort of need to get the ball rolling here. I know this is a hot button topic, it's in the news right now, but we sort of need to react to that, and 4 months is not a lot of time to make those decisions, and these are really important decisions going forward. So I think, it's got to start now.
Yeah, we'll probably have an RFP ready for you by the end of the week for your review before we publish it. So we're working on it. Okay, so you want to do the data presentation? So usually with this, Adam will go through the whole thing, and then people will ask questions if they have any. Okay? All right, go ahead.
Alrighty, so this is our annual assessment report, and we're going to have to break it into 2 parts this year, like we did last year. New York State hasn't yet released the New York State testing data. They recently sent a memo that we should move forward with academic intervention services decisions without using that data. So that makes me think that we should. We did do that, but they're. I'm thinking more delayed than they typically are. They're usually pretty delayed. Last year, we also broke this into 2 parts. So either way, I'm going to present what I can present, which is the NWEA MAPS scores, which I had just spoken about a little bit, advanced placement, NAP exams, SAT, ACT, college matriculation, and then we're going to we have to save the state ed 3 through 8 testing, and we'll also save the Regents exam scores for when it's released and unembargoed, and then I'll share it with you as soon as I can. So this is just a piece of our performance report, but it's kind of neat that it follows on the literacy presentation because there is a lot of literacy data and we can look at it through the lens of like how are students doing based on the plate that I just shared with you. So I'll mention those things as we go forward. So NWEA MAPS is Northwestern Educational Association Measure of Academic Progress. That's what that stands for. You usually just hear it as the acronym. We give it in grades 1 through 8, and we give it in both math and reading. It is not affiliated with any of our other reading programs or math programs. It's a totally independent, they call it a universal screener, and it basically takes like millions of children across the country, creates norms for how students grow over time, not unlike when you go to the doctor with a child and they show you like a growth curve and they say like, here's the range of growth and here's where your child is in the growth. It does the same thing. So it can map both achievement and growth. We give it 3 times a year in the fall, in the winter, and the spring. Our parents now are pretty used to seeing the reports. We're actually going to do a webinar for our parents of younger students. We haven't done that in a few years, so we want to make sure for the new parents that haven't seen these reports that they know how to read them. But I will share some of the data with you, and it gives us a really good opportunity to track student progress here over time and how our programs are impacting that growth and achievement. So here we go. Here's the first graph. You can see the grades across the bottom, grades 1 through 8. This is ELA. And you can see the mean scores, so the average scores, and you'll see for grade 1, just so you get a sense, there's several graphs that follow the same pattern. You'll see grade 1, you'll see when we give this assessment in the fall, what their score is. This score is a RIT score. It's a proprietary score that MAPS uses, so you can kind of track trends over time. But you can see in grade 1, you can see that steep curve that we had talked about. This is where like the theory matches the actual observations as we collect real data. You can see our students have that steeper curve in first grade, second grade, third grade, and then it starts to level out as you get up into middle school. That's typical of what you'd expect with regard to the normed curve. And you can see the 3 assessments, fall, winter, and spring over time. So what you want to see is you want to see this curve moving up to the right, just like it is, and you want to see across each grade, you want to see those steps moving up. That means, that's a good thing. All of these data we can drill into pretty significantly. We can see data by student, by class, by school, and we do that, but this is a pretty like high level overview of that data or these data. So this one I put in the normed growth lines for fall and for spring. So that light blue line, if you compare that light blue line with our light blue scores, you can see that our students are scoring significantly above the normed line in grades 1 through 8. So you're comparing that like aqua blue to that aqua blue normed line. And then the other one I put is the spring norm. The winter norm just kind of travels right in the middle of the two. So it was just too much when I put that on. But you can see again, our students are above that spring norm line as they go from grades 1 through 8. You can also see the impact of that literacy program in grades 1, 2, and 3. You do see that, that steep curve as the students go up through the program. In math, the curve's a little bit different of a shape. It's a little more linear as you go. Again, you can see the steps and the nice upward slope to the right side. And again, we have the norms. So you could get a sense of comparing how our students compare to the norms. Now, that it's important to note that the norms are not like current averages. They don't take everyone that took the fall assessment and then average all the kids, like the few million kids that took it. Instead, they norm the tests every couple of years and they take all the students and then they keep that norm, kind of the same norm year after year. Just like a doctor's office would do with like a height curve. They wouldn't continue to average all the kids to create the curve. The curve's just kind of a standard curve. So you can see how the students track in math. Now, this chart is for the MAPS assessment. The students are broken into 5 categories. There's the highest one is called high, and then there's high average, average, low average, and low. So in order to read this, you can see how the students break down by category. So the more of that bright orange, the better is basically the gist of it. And the bright orange and that like dark blue, those top parts of the curve, what we really want to see is we want to see those taking up like more of the more of the line they take up, the better. The low and low average, obviously you want, less of that. So you can see some trends over time with regard to, grades 1, 2, and 3, that slope is the right slope. In this case, it's good that it's going down to the right for grades 1, 2, and 3, because that means increasingly students are scoring in that high and high average category. I guess it's also interesting in that that's, a big part of the conversation there is about, K1, 2, and that's actually based on these data. That's like that's the strongest part of our program. If somebody, didn't know and just looked at our data, they would say like, that's a really strong part of your educational program. So this is interesting. I wanted to highlight this because we have done a lot of work in 5th grade when it comes to changing the experience of students for like having 2-person teams instead of having 4-person teams. We've done a lot of intentional work around instructional space, around practices in 5th grade that make it a smoother transition from 4th grade to 5th grade. And what you see here is that this is from 2022 results to 2023. You can see that significant jump in 5th grade. My hope is that as a result of our programmatic changes that we made with regard to those bigger blocks of time for ELA and social studies, bigger blocks of time for math and science. I also want to note, if you see the numbers around 2/3 of the students like hovering around that 66% across the board, we don't see that same rise in math, but that 66% becomes important, and I'll show you why here in a minute. All right, so this is that same graph that I showed you before in math. And this one, the trend is stronger in terms of like, we really want to see the trend being down to the right for the bright orange and dark blue. You can see in 8th grade, more than 75% of the students are scoring in the high and high average range in math. So what this is sharing with us is the longer students are in our math program, the better they do. The higher percentage of them are moved into that, stronger high and high average category when compared to those national norms. So here we didn't see that same jump in 5th grade. This is math, but you can see, remember I said, that 2/3 number, the students in math in 5th grade were actually scoring pretty well. They were around that 2/3 mark already. And you can see again, the strength of the program over time as it grows and it moves to the right. This is high and high average achievement, 5 through 8.
All right, so before you move into our AP exams, I just want to highlight, we've made some really significant changes with 5th grade, with 8th grade algebra, and you can begin to see that reflected in the data that Adam's highlighting. So I know that sometimes when you're making transitions like that, there's this unknown of, how that's going to be reflected in student performance, but I think that you can see that in our data that we've been pretty pleased with how kids have performed based on these adjustments that we've made together. So Right, go ahead, Adam.
All right, so we're going to jump up to advanced placement exams. Usually sitting in this gap are some like regions results and state results. So it's a little bit of a shift here. We went from K-8 literacy and math, and we're going to jump up to the advanced placement because I can't share the state data just yet. Actually, I don't have it in some cases. This is total AP exams by year. You can see there is some interesting components of the data around COVID. 2021 was that year where like it was like AP optional, and so you see that that jumped down. It was also the year where there was a lot of instability in terms of like alternating schedules and that kind of thing. But you can see it's kind of leveled off and is pretty consistent there for 2022 and 2023 with regard to total exams. This next graph or chart is a representation of the number of AP exams compared to the total student enrollment. And you see again that little anomaly there for, I think it was the effect or the impact of COVID with regard to number of AP exams. So here's a chart that shows us the number of the percentage of AP students that have a score of 3 or better. AP is a scale of 1 to 5. And so 3 or better is considered a pretty solid score on an AP exam. And so you can see, how we've tracked over time with regard to the scores. And here is AP exam score year to year. So this is the number of students that scored a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, et cetera, by year. So obviously the more students you have in that higher end, that 4 and 5, the better. And so you can see total numbers over time with this graph.
And I just want to share when you're looking at this graph in 2020 that we didn't, because students weren't here taking the assessment, we were close. So I think you can see that reflected. It's a little inconsistent that year compared to the rest of the years that we're reporting up here. Well,
all right, so here you have AP exam results overall. You can see that in many cases, we offer these courses. We also allow students to challenge an AP exam, even if we don't offer the course. So you can see the scores of how students did. It's important to note here that some of these courses are generally taken by underclassmen, or not underclassmen, but like juniors, for example, and others are more typically taken by seniors. And often we'll see the scores fluctuate depending on that, like where a student is. Many of our seniors, unfortunately, are in a place where they've been accepted to college and it's, May of their senior year, and they maybe don't like double down and commit to the AP like they did as juniors. So you do see that impact sometimes where, for example, like an AP biology course has younger students in it, you usually see the scores are elevated compared to like an AP physics where it's a little bit lower because it's often taken by seniors. And then you'll see that, that kind of drop off, not because the students didn't learn a lot. Like they learn, we have fantastic AP physics teachers, they learn a lot. But when it comes to May of their senior year, they're we don't always commit to the extent that we'd like them to with that final assessment.
now, one of the things that we're talking about with our new strategic plan is if it makes sense, and the high school's going to work on this and make some recommendations, to move some of these APs down to the 9th and 10th grade level. So that's a conversation that's happening right now because currently it's juniors and seniors, where in other school districts, there are some AP exams offered to 9th and 10th graders. So I just want to share with you, that's a discussion. It's on the strategic plan. It's been put out there to the community. And at some point in the future, we'll be talking about where we landed with that. But also with the understanding that our 9th grade program next year will be completely elective for our kids. So I'm not talking about 9th grade science because we're offering a living environment to all of our 8th grade students now. So just a little forecasting. Go ahead, Anna.
Great. So we're going to shift from APs to SATs and ACTs so we can give you some results there. You can see by this graph, like these numbers to me feel pretty remarkable, to be honest with you, in terms of the scores here. Many of us took the SATs, and you may be thinking about your scores, and these are the average scores at Greeley. You can see last year for math, the average score was a 694. For the reading and writing component, it was a 673. It gave students an overall average of 1367, which is really for a public high school, like remarkable. We have heard a lot about, the level of rigor and the academic experiences that kids have and how that has tracked over time. And based on these data, it's gotten stronger. Students are increasing, and there's a lot of variables that play into this, but it is a measure that does, some colleges now are test optional, but students will often send their scores, and in many cases colleges require that they do. Many of our students go on to pretty highly competitive colleges, which I'll share in a minute, and this is certainly a part of what drives that. So pretty impressive scores, and also an impressive trend. You can see over time how those scores have tracked, and over the last 4 or 5 years they've inched up by like 10 points a year, which is just pretty amazing. I think at some point we're going to probably hit some kind of top threshold, and I think it could be really hard to continue to show improvement in this area, just based on how that assessment is designed. So here's the ACT. The ACT has been pretty consistent. The big difference between the SAT and the ACT is known to have more like content knowledge on it. There's social studies parts, there's science parts. It's not just math and literacy. So this is the ACT scores you can see over time. Pretty consistent, very consistent. And then this is another incredible number, higher than it's been since I've been here. 50 national merit commended students. I had to double check that because I was just shocked that there are that many. Not that we don't have really talented students, but that number, the recognition is a really high level. And so to have 50 national merit commended students, 13 semifinalists, 13 finalists, and then 98.9% of the class of 2023 went on to higher education. And just a nod to all of that hard work, faculty, staff, administration, students. Here is a list of 2023 schools. For those of you that have had students go through the system, we actually track all of these data as well as the results that students have gotten them into these colleges. And then other students that are moving through can see scatter plots of how students did that got in, how students did that didn't get in. And so having this kind of track record to so many competitive colleges is helpful for students to identify, reach schools, target schools, safe schools over time. So this is half of the group. And then here's another slide. I know it's small text, but it's an impressive list for sure.
Which is why when we talk about making some significant shifts in our ELA program, we really have to think about that, because our current approach is translating to some real success for our kids. And so we just have to be very thoughtful and deliberate in how we talk about making decisions that will impact the entire program based on our results. And so I want to thank Adam and his team for pulling this all together. And there'll be a second half of this when State Ed decides to release our scores to us, and we'll be able to share that out in a future meeting. But we thought it was important and very timely to be sharing this out today based on the conversations that the community has been having regarding some of the concerns that they may have based on some of the decisions that TC has made. So, are there any questions about any of the data? It's pretty straightforward.
I have a couple of questions. Ooh.
Yes, Alyssa, yes.
That was aggressively loud. Adam, when you mentioned the webinar that you're going to put out to parents to teach them how to read the test results, I would recommend offering that to all the way through 8th grade parents, because some of us might need a refresher on how to read those results, and every time they come out, I have to rethink about what the paper means. So I think everyone could benefit from having the opportunity to go to that webinar. And then a couple questions about the slides themselves. The slide where you talk about the norm line that popped up, it seems like our math norms were way higher than the math norm line is, and more like on par with the ELA norm. And is that what you see when you look at a picture of the whole country as well, that kids tend to do better on the math than they do on the ELA, or is that something that's special about Chappaqua?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think you're right in saying the math results are more consistently over the national norm. I'd like to see those same trends in ELA. I think it's possible to do. I think that a lot of that has to do with alignment of middle school units and alignment of middle school curriculum. When you have a tight aligned curriculum at the middle school for ELA, for example, it gives us a system to work on. It was one of our strategic goals to have the experience more aligned across the district with regard to curriculum alignment. And I know that that there's been a lot of conversation in the community around like teacher autonomy and discretion versus mapped units. Middle school ELA was the last area for us to map. In the whole district, we had aligned K-8 math, science, social studies before we had English. This year is the first year that we have actual aligned units in ELA. And without the aligned units, you don't have a system to work on. It's hard to do professional development for teachers that are all teaching different things, different books, different topics, different focus, different order, different pacing. When you have a tight scope and sequence, you can work on that system based on student results. So you can look at your student results as a whole district, and then you can go to the place where that curriculum is taught and how it's taught and make adjustments to it. When you have everybody teaching something different and you look at student results, they tend to be a little bit more all over the place, and it's harder to work on the system because everybody does it individually. So I'm happy to report and proud to report that we now have a scope and sequence for middle school. We have an order, we have units defined. It was hard work to get there. It was a lot of collaborative work with our faculty to get there. Our faculty made the scope and sequence with the units and the order and the pacing guide. But I think that having that is going to allow us to really work on that system in a way that you can see, you'll see an increase in, like math. The math curriculum is tight. It's tight, it's scripted, it's paced, it's got, we've got math assessments that are consistent across the board. And so to work on that kind of system in a way that you can drive performance is easier than a system that is classroom by classroom, kind of developed. So, and I also understand that there's a balance there, that when I say those things, that it's sensitive to find a balance between how tight a curriculum is and how much teacher discretion there is, because I also understand that teacher discretion allows teachers to tailor instruction in a way that it's powerful for the students in front of them. So there's a break point or a threshold to tightness when it comes to curriculum, which at that point you go past it and it becomes an obstacle for a teacher to be able to really tailor instruction. So I know that was a long answer, but I think that we have some work to do in ELA. Interestingly, based on our previous conversation, we have lots of work to do K-2, don't get me wrong, because we have big decisions to make. However, based on these data, middle school ELA really needs to continue to be a focus area, and it's in our strategic plan as a focus area.
And then one last thing regarding SATs and ACTs. As schools are going more and more test optional, less kids are deciding to take the tests at all. So I didn't know if I could tell up there what percentage of kids you were reporting those scores from, if you're seeing a drop off these last 2 years of kids even taking SAT and ACTs overall, and if the kids who are reporting their scores are obviously going to be the kids who felt they would do really well at taking those tests, and therefore the kids who might not be doing as well are selecting themselves out and just not even taking the test.
Yeah, it's true that there are many test optional schools now, and there are some students that have chosen not to take it. The recommendation has been take it, give it a shot, see how you do. Right. We haven't seen a tremendous drop off. I don't have the numbers of it, but the recommendations have been to continue to take it. If you do well, great, you can report it. If not, you don't have to. You can apply to a test optional school. But it's, I think, increasingly as we're seeing that test optional, I'm going to have to start sharing, or I will start sharing, that line too, just like we do with number of APs and how that's changing. It's how many students are taking that SAT.
Yeah, when you start looking at the colleges saying what their average SAT score is, those numbers are going up because the kids who are reporting are the kids who are doing, really well and therefore reporting the scores. Yeah. So I think it's an interesting thing to watch that everyone's average SAT score is going up at the college level.
Yeah.
I was going to ask a similar question on that last one. Do we know our students' SAT scores even if they choose not to report it to colleges?
Yes.
Okay, so if they take the shot at it, then it's in there as part of our average, whether or not they decide to take it forward. So that's helpful in knowing, we're not seeing people opt out of sharing and having that explain why our numbers might be a little bit better. Okay.
Yeah, that's all our students that took it. I can actually include, I'm happy to include a slide when I do part 2 of this and include some state data. I can put a slide in there. It would be interesting to know more about that and how that's trending over time.
The second thing I was going to ask about is, I think a lot of this data, as it was last year, is really impressive. And I think for the majority of families, they're going to look at that and go, wow, we're doing great. For the families out there who are like, my kid is not hitting those marks, and they're showing up in the low average or the low on the MAPS scores, I just thought it might be an opportunity quickly to just let people know, again, how we use those scores to determine how the interventions that we do plus in, because especially, again, in the ELA, we're just talking about that. You showed quickly in the slide the row of the intervention stuff that we've got available, but just to connect that to the lower scoring students.
Yeah, I think probably, Jamie, if you want to speak to kind of students that might need some extra support.
So certainly special ed is one way but it is not our only way. And in all of our buildings, we have a multi-tiered system of support. You've probably heard me talk about MTSS quite a bit at this point. So as soon as the teachers get the scores from the NWEA, they go through a review process to see those students who are falling below a certain cut point. And those kids become eligible for academic intervention services in the school. And that's in place for both reading and math, and that's a K-8 system. So, and those numbers are watched, as well as classroom progress is also monitored very closely. And there are 3 tiers to that level of support. And those tiers differ in frequency and intensity of support and service. So usually, the tier 1 level is an in-classroom intervention in reading, writing, or math. If that is insufficient, then there's a tier 2 level of service, which is AIS for a certain number of days of the cycle in a certain period of time, and increases in intensity and program for a tier 3. All of that is in place for any of our students. And then if that's still insufficient, then a referral to the Committee on Special Education would be recommended by the MTSS committee or the teacher.
Great, and people don't have to take action for that stuff to happen. We're doing that proactively.
That's correct.
Right,
Yep.
just to be sure.
So just one quick clarification question. So when we looked at the AP scores, overall, they're really impressive. So you think that the sort of outlier ones, like Physics 1, where we actually had a lot of kids taking the class and maybe less impressive outcomes, you think that's because with the seniors, they either know that their school isn't going to let them pass out of physics when they get there, even if they do well, or because they're a senior and they're just done? Like that, we don't need to read anything more into that being an outlier sort of in the AP test results?
Yeah, so yes, I think you're right on. The other thing I'd say is that there's some of these data are around students that are challenging a test that haven't taken the course. They've like self-studied and then they've done this. And then another big, really important piece is the research coming out of the College Board and others is that the value in the AP program is access to rigor more than it is anything with regard to the score. So what the studies are coming out and sharing or showing is that even students that participate in an AP course that get a 2 get great benefit of just the access to rigor, the high level of instruction, the peer influence of being with other students that are like doubling down into that like academic level of rigor. So although it's not what we want to have happen, having open enrollment, which is another thing that impacts the scores, and allowing students to challenge themselves to do it and experience that high level of rigor pays dividends in terms of the success down the road. So there's all those pieces that I think that of course, it would be great for more and more students to get 4s and 5s on these tests, but I don't want to lose sight of that, like that students challenging themselves, access to rigor, and having that college-like experience at the high school level, preparing them for the rigors of college, the next year, a couple of years later.
Thank
you. Before I kind of sum up the superintendent's report, I do want to share that, and I know Hillary mentioned this, on the agenda tonight I have presented the SRO contract for your consideration, and I want to thank, it was certainly a process, but I want to thank Jim Carroll and his team and the town board for working with us to get us to this moment where you were able to act on this contract tonight, and to our board and our attorney. I want to share, though there's additional steps, so it's here for your consideration tonight. Should you approve it, their town board has to go through their process to approve the contract. And then Jim Carroll and I need to work together to figure out, okay, who are the SROs going to be, who are going to be working with the elementary and middle school. So I just want to share, and the same thing happened with Michelle, who was their SRO at the high school. There's the approval, and then there's the process to put people in place. So at our next meeting, I'll update, should everything move forward as planned, at the next meeting, I'll update the community on where we are with the process. Okay? So again, open house is coming up. We have homecoming next week. We got our picture days We have our holiday, and so with respect to everyone celebrating, I hope you have a good experience with your families. And we're open. I know the first week was very hot, and I appreciate everyone's cooperation as we work through that week, because we do not close for the heat. And now hopefully we're in a better space because it's much cooler out, and we were thrilled to welcome our kids back. They all came back ready to learn. So that's the end of our superintendent's report. So thank you.
Thank you. So that brings us to committee reports. You can do it.
So we had our first communications committee meeting, which was a goal-setting session, more or less, to try to figure out what are the things where the folks serving can, be helpful to the district and thinking about improving our communications. Dr. Ackerman mentioned one of the things, which is taking a look at the open house experience as maybe one thing we might do, and there were a few others.
Okay, great. I know a lot of the committees are starting to meet in the next week or two, so we'll have a more robust committee report going forward. So that brings us to public comment. We welcome public comments, and in respect for each other's time, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Board members may be contacted also via email or phone. After the public comment period has been completed, board members may have a discussion amongst themselves regarding comments presented. I also just want to remind anyone making a public comment tonight that the use of personally identifiable information of either students or adults is not permitted during public comment. And if you have anything that falls under that, just email us.
Good evening. Wait, I need to take a name out. Sorry, I'm doing that. My name is Christy Noel Crace. For context, I have lived in Chappaqua for over 22 years as a parent in the school district, with all 4 of my children attending K through 12 in the school district and graduating. In addition to being a parent and constituent, I'm an educator, have a master's degree in elementary ed, teaching and curriculum from Teachers College, and another master's degree in ed policy and sociology of education, also from TC. I've taught in several schools in New York City before moving to Chappaqua in 2001, and in addition to my work with NACI, I have worked in the school district as a full-time and part-time substitute teacher in an elementary school since April of 2021. Excuse me. My goal tonight is to highlight major disconnects that I see as both an educator and education policy specialist, and as a parent in our school district, which I truly believe is compromising the learning environments across the board in our district. To begin, the responsibilities of the elected school board members is to be liaisons between the community and administration, and represent the best interest of the students and the communities. Over the 3 years that I've spent as an educator in the district, and the countless I have spent as a volunteer in the schools, I've never seen a school board member inside any building during school hours, which in my educated opinion is counterintuitive to being able to represent the needs of stakeholders in this community. I will also tell you that visits from administrators are weekly, perfunctory, quick walkthroughs of buildings or standing out front and greeting students, both of which are useless, careless, and come across exactly as that to the staff. It's certainly much easier to check off a building walkthrough than to use the visit as an opportunity to see what is really taking place in the classrooms or to ask about the challenges that teachers are facing. One of you probably administration, doesn't remember walking into the semi-air conditioned classroom on the first day of school this year that registered 82 degrees at noon, where I was having lunch with a few other teachers and saying to us, "Boy, is it hot in here," and then walking out without asking us any questions about our day or the challenges that the heat presented. In fact, if any of you were to ever visit and spend quality time in the schools, you might have noticed that the classroom temperature often registers over 90 degrees in the beginning and the end of the school year. It was actually 96 degrees at 2:30 p.m. in the 4th grade classroom I was in on Tuesday and Wednesday of last week. What this feels like for teachers and students in those classrooms, I cannot even begin to tell you. But I do know that it's not an environment conducive to learning for anyone. There's no airflow in the classrooms, especially as classroom doors remain locked and closed for safety. And moving children in and out of the 3 air-conditioned spaces in the building to get relieved is not only disruptive to learning, but it's also not an okay fix. Okay, Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Green. I'm a parent of a kindergarten and a second grader at Grafflin and a preschooler. I have over 15 years of experience as a special educator, and I'm currently a special ed teacher in a neighboring district in Westchester. I'm here tonight to express my very deep concern regarding the TC model of reading and writing instruction that, based on recent emails and the current presentation, will continue to be implemented in our schools. It is my belief that the model has failed our students, resulting in significant numbers of children who struggle with reading and writing and spelling. While I appreciate the presentation earlier, I still believe that there are significant issues with the workshop model. The first being that the model of instruction and its reliance on quick mini lessons followed directly by independent work. While mini lessons can provide a brief introduction to a concept, they often lack the depth and practice necessary for students to truly understand and apply the material. Expecting students to work independently immediately after a mini lesson can be problematic, as it may leave them feeling confused and unsupported. This approach fails to provide the necessary scaffolding and guidance for students to navigate complex tasks, hindering their learning and overall academic growth. More importantly, it's a very poor use of precious instructional time in the classroom. Another concern with the TC model, or the workshop model, is the use of scripted lessons. This greatly restricts teachers' creativity in the classroom. By following a predetermined script, teachers are limited in their ability to adapt lessons to meet the unique needs and interests of their students. This lack of flexibility can impact the development of a teacher's own voice and teaching style, ultimately affecting the engagement and success of instruction. Allowing teachers the freedom to bring their own creativity and expertise into the classroom can lead to more dynamic and personalized learning experiences for students. While I appreciate the presentation earlier, I just want to say that I have a child in second grade this year, and as shared, this is a pivotal year as it's her last quote-unquote year to learn to read. The idea that we're going to wait and see if the new workshop model is successful does an enormous disservice for my second grader, especially since we know, based on many, many years of research, that the workshop model does not work. The dissolving of Lucy Calkins' department may have just happened this week, but the concerns and conversations around the failing of the workshop model have been a part of the conversation in the education field for many years. Because of this, I would like to ask the board to reconsider their decision to use a failed pedagogy in our schools. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody have, oh.
Hi, my name is Barrett Flom, and I have a first grader in the district. I wanted to talk tonight. I agree with some of the concerns that have been raised about Teachers College Units of Studies program, and while it's been described as a very strong program and the fact that it has closed does not mean that the program is bad, I think that it doesn't mean it's good, and I think that the fact that our students do well in the district is great. However, we have a significantly lower rate of classification, therefore students who might need additional assistance may not be getting it through the school district, and instead the students' families might be using reading tutors, and this is something that you hear anecdotally throughout the district, families complaining about the fact that they have to hire reading tutors. So it's great that our numbers seem to be doing well, but I think that when we continue to talk about whether we're going to use this program going forward, we need to consider whether or not the scores are being compared to pre versus post use of Teachers College. I also think that this district as a whole often uses inertia and just whatever has been working. We're a great district and we rely on that, but that's not enough. We should always be reevaluating whether or not there are things that we can do to improve. I know it's hard to right a ship when you're using the wrong curriculum or maybe even just not the best fit, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep pushing forward quickly to deal with this. As I mentioned, I have a first grader, so I'm right in the middle of that needs to learn to read time. So this is very important. Also, I think that when you're looking at how you can engage with the community around this issue, rather than saying it's sensational and there's a lot of sensational news about it, I think that you should be taking the opportunity to listen to the concerns of the parents and including in the agenda the fact that you're going to be talking about things like this that you know are sensationalized and important, because I know that there are parents that wish that they could have been here tonight but didn't even know that it was going to be discussed. And that's very disappointing when there's members in the community who want to be more engaged and don't even know that it's going to be here tonight. I shouldn't have to hear third party or through Facebook that this is going to be discussed tonight, particularly because I've emailed and I've asked Zoom questions and I'm as engaged as we're going to get. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody have any comments? Only just a reminder that all of our meetings are taped, so hopefully people who would have wanted to watch it will take the opportunity to watch it on replay. Anything else? No? Okay, so that brings us to approvals and ratifications. Can I have a motion, please, for items 3.1 and 3.2 together, which are accepting the minutes of the August 31st and September 5th meetings, respectively? I move.
A second.
Any questions or concerns? All in favor?
I recommend 4.1 instructional as presented.
Recommend we accept the superintendent's recommendation for 4.1.
I will second that. Any questions, concerns? All in favor?
I recommend 4.2 non-instructional as presented.
I will move that we accept the superintendent's recommendations for 4.2 as presented.
Second.
Questions or concerns? All in favor?
Yep.
Okay, that brings us to our consent agenda. The use of the consent agenda permits the Board of Education to make more effective use of its time by adopting a single motion to cover those relatively routine matters which are included. Any member of the board who wishes to discuss individually a particular piece of business on the consent agenda may so indicate, and that item will be considered and voted on separately, thus preserving the right of all board members to be heard on any issue. Is there anything that anybody would like to remove from the consent agenda?
I just have to recuse myself on 6.3. So,
Oh, that's 6.3?
yes.
Okay, that's, we can,
Oh,
that's
sorry,
an
I'm sorry.
acknowledgement, so
I
I've
jumped
already
ahead.
signed that, so we're okay.
Is there anything we need to remove from 5? Okay, then can I have a motion for the consent agenda, please, which is items 5.1 through 5.5?
I'll move the consent agenda.
Are there any questions or concerns about anything that we are approving on the consent agenda? Okay, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That brings us to 6. Let's take each of these separately then. Can I have a motion, please, for 6.1? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we are just acknowledging
That you've read them.
that we've read these because they've already been approved by Dr. Ackerman. So I don't think you even have to recuse yourself because we're really just acknowledging these.
Got it.
So I will move 6.1 through 6.4 that we are acknowledging the contracts already approved by Dr. Ackerman per policy 6085. Can I have a second? Any questions or concerns? All in favor? Okay, there's nothing under 7. 8.1 is acknowledging receipt of the claims auditor report for August of '23. Can I have a motion, please, for 8.1?
I second.
Questions or concerns? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that brings us to notice of future meetings. Our next meeting is September 27th, 2023 at 7 p.m., which is the audit approval, and then our meeting after that is October 11th, also at 7 p.m. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please, at 8:44 p.m.?
Yeah, second.
All in favor? Okay, we are adjourned.